Oftentimes I get a client or a future client or a potential client that calls and says, well, I followed my wife or my husband and I saw him with or saw her with an individual at a bar or wherever. And though you can gather that type of information, it can be used against you to get a stalking injunction or a protective order. And you need that independent voice that removes you from it. Many times if you were to catch your future ex-spouse involved in something like that, emotions get the best of you, and people don't make the best decisions when they're under extreme stress. If you have that independent third party gathering that information for you, they're gathering it in the proper way. There's no emotion involved. We're just doing a job. And that information typically is more admissible in court or carries more weight. And so we advise against doing your own work. Eyes on Private Investigations has been around since 2008. It's a sole proprietor. I have almost 30 years in law enforcement. I was Investigator of the Year or Officer of the Year for the agency that I worked for, several commendations during my tenure as a law enforcement officer. Most of my 29 years was spent as an investigator. I started working for the Utah Department of Insurance in the fraud division, investigating insurance fraud type crimes. I noticed that we would get cases from insurance companies, and many times the cases, they would hire private investigators to investigate those cases. And a lot of times the video just was not what it needed to be to do a prosecution. And I saw that there were issues with the cases that were being put together, and so the idea came, well, when I get out of law enforcement, I should start a business that's private investigations, because I thought at the time we could do it better. It has turned out that we can do it better. You know, we provide an array of services, and that's part of the reason we have so many different investigators, right? Those investigators are educated and trained in many different services. Primarily, we do, if you want to talk about the big cases or the big things that we do all types of family law. So divorce, custody, alimony termination, and that's a big one in Utah for people who are paying a lot of money in alimony. We do criminal defense, and we do a lot of insurance type cases. So insurance defense, investigating in workers' comp fraud, insurance type fraud cases. You know, I tell potential clients when they're looking to hire an investigator, look at background and experience. You know, in Utah, an individual has to have 5,000 hours of training to own their own agency. Other investigators, meaning other investigators working for the agency, don't have to have that type of background. But when we're looking for a good investigator, we're looking for people who, I like military, people who were in the military, for a couple reasons. One, they're not afraid of hard work. They're not afraid to be up in the middle of the night. I look for ex-law enforcement or retired law enforcement because they need to know the legal process. They need to know that the evidence that they're gathering, why they're gathering it, and what it's going to be used for, and that when they do gather it, it's admissible in court. And so understanding the legal process is important. So many of my investigators have degrees in criminal justice because I want them to understand the court process. When they're gathering evidence, we need to know that it's going to be admissible. So the process of hiring an investigator would be, number one, a consult. You want to talk with an investigator. You want to be comfortable with who you're talking to. You want to be comfortable with the fact that they can do the job that you've asked them to do. Ask questions. Make sure that they're licensed. Make sure that they're insured. Make sure that they have the staff to handle what you need done. I mean, if they're a one-man show, I would be wary of that. If they're working 5 or 6 cases, they may not be able to respond to your case in a timely manner. Make sure that there's paperwork. In Utah, we have to have a contract. So you have to sign a contract with that agency. You know, the person investigating your crime might not have 25 years of experience, but they've got eyes on behind them, giving them information, giving them training, and guiding them through that investigative process.